Wind snaps at the siding, and the yard goes still, the kind of cold that keeps a town honest. In here it's just the hum of the fridge and the tick of the wall clock stepping through the dark before morning. A thin coil of steam lifts from black coffee slips away, and the kitchen keeps its secrets. Name's Hank Cooper. 58. Marion, Ohio. I've spent half my life turning bolts until they change their minds. You get a feel for the exact pressure it takes. Too soft, nothing moves. Too hard, you snap what you meant to save. Somewhere that rule crawled off the bench and into the rest of me. 7 nights ago, the landline rattled the quiet. A voice I didn't know steadied itself and said she was 19, said she'd been searching, said she believes I'm her father. No crying. No music. Just a line of words set down like tools in a straight row. I stood with the receiver in my hand and listened to my own breathing come back from the window glass. Since then, every small sound has a shadow boots on the mudroom tile, the sway of the feeder, the way the house tightens when the furnace kicks. I've been the kind of man who keeps moving so nothing can catch him. Today, I stop. Today, I let it catch up. The light slides across the counter, and I slide with it one hand out steady as I can make it toward the cup. The mug skids and the coffee jumps a brown rib across the counter before it lies still. The fridge hum shifts. The house tightens for a beat. I steady the cup oil and orange cleaner in the lines of my hands. Outside the yard sits pale with winter light, and the feeder swings on an empty hook. I am Hank Cooper, 58, and this kitchen knows my steps. Black coffee at 5. Lunch wrapped at 5:30. The back door at 6. The truck at 6:10. Marion, Ohio carries me the rest of the way, 2 lanes, a grain elevator, a main street that can tell who is coming by the sound of the tires. The Craftsman box lives in the mudroom. Red paint chipped to steel. Drawers that glide like they remember younger wrists. In the shallow tray sits a locker key I cannot place. Sometimes I lift it and turn it in my palm. One tooth is nicked as if it fought a lock once and lost, and I set it down again where the metal cool meets the scarred paint. The landline rings with its old bell chatter. I let one ring pass, then another, then I answer and say my name. A breath holds at the far end. A young voice steps in, careful and steady. She says her name is Emily. She says she is 19. She says she thinks I am her father. I give her my cell. The landline warms my ear while I wait. The buzz comes across the counter. A photo opens on the screen. A face I do not know, and my eyes looking back, blue edged with gray, the small crease at the rim that deepens when I try not to smile. Another image follows. A birth certificate with my name in the father field and an empty box where ink never landed. The fold lines run like veins through the paper. She says her mother Laura passed last week. Her former stepfather Rick has papers ready, a management track for the insurance money. If she signs blind, the money moves without her. Paper travels faster than regret. She wants the truth first, and an adult who will stand on the side of the law. I set the receiver down and call from my cell. I carry the phone to the sink and wash my hands. I wipe the coffee ring with my palm. The stain ghosts back a shade darker, like a bill I thought I had paid. The mug sits beside the locker key. Black coffee. Cold metal. I tell the room no hiding this time. We keep our words short. I tell her we should meet in public where anyone can see us. The Main Street diner will do. A window table. Coffee that keeps coming. We finish the sentence before we answer it. We do not reach for a name that has not been earned. We put the papers on the table and let our eyes do the work before our mouths do. She agrees. Her voice holds steady like someone who has carried groceries and textbooks and grief up the same stairs. She will bring the certificate copy. She says her mother kept a small key in a chipped blue dish by the sink. I glance at my own dish by habit, white glaze a nick at the rim from a dropped wrench on a winter evening. We end without anything extra, no promises, no big words, just a time and a place and a thin fence to keep us both from falling. The room relaxes a board at a time. A truck goes by on Maple, and the tailgate knocks against itself. I pour the cold coffee down the sink, rinse the cup, set it upside down to dry. My hands slow on purpose. Heart work does not like a rush. I take a legal pad from the drawer and print 3 lines. Diner at 4:30. Bring the certificate copy. Do not sign anything before counsel reads it. The pencil leaves a pale groove where the graphite thins. I fold the page and slide it into my jacket pocket. I write my name on the back. Paper without a name gets lost in any office. Laura sits like weather at the edge of the frame. I see the weeks that went thin and the day the house emptied. A knight 8 years back steps forward, a sedan idling behind the shop, a squeal under the hood like a bird behind a belt guard. I fixed it fast and left the invoice blank. I saw a man in the dark at the lot edge and stepped away before he turned his face. I did not know his name then. I know it now. I go to the mudroom and slide open the top drawer. The order of steel settles me. 1/2-inch sockets like soldiers a ratchet that outlived 2 trucks' chalk line husk a pencil chewed to a nub. The locker key rests where the paint is thin. I lift it. I test the edge against my thumb. The nicked tooth scratches a small arc in the skin and leaves nothing but a thought. Somewhere there is a door that fits this bite. Work teaches what to do when the part you need is not on the bench. You lay out what you do have. You sweep the grit from the pan. You do not unbolt what you cannot put back. I put the key down where I can find it and go back to the counter. The radio sits above the washer. I leave it off. Noise would only pretend to help. The phone buzzes again. Emily sets the time. 4:30. I answer that I will be there. I picture the window at the diner, the glass smudged by 100 mornings, the steel napkin holder, the sugar packets in a cracked white cup. I picture the way the light hits paper and throws a pale square across the laminate. I picture 2 hands and a stack of proof and a quiet that does not need to be filled to be true. I open the back door and carry the trash to the curb. The air snaps on the skin and clears the lungs. Snow clings in a thin, dirty line along the fence. Somewhere a dog voices its opinion to the middle distance. I stand for one breath, then another, then I go back and unlock the door and test the knob like I always do. I think about my father without saying his name. He would lay the tools in order and lean until the rattle quit. I lay the tools of this hour in order. Note in the pocket. Phone charged, wallet with the card of a lawyer who answers his own calls. Key on the counter where I can see it, and where the light can find it if I come home after dark. The truck waits in the driveway. The clock on the wall taps the minute closer. I do not try to tell myself a clean story. I do not argue the past into something it never was. I line up what I know. A call. A face with my eyes. A paper with my name and an empty line. A man named Rick with a plan that moves faster than grief if no one stands in its way. I put on my jacket and lift my keys and stop. The locker key is still in my hand. I do not remember picking it up. It fits like it has been waiting for my grip to come back to it. I set it beside the empty mug and step back. 3 small things that draw a map. Mug, key, phone. I leave them where they are and let the light do the talking. The room does not move. Neither do I. The door closes behind me, and the afternoon thins into a pale band across the roofs. The truck coughs steadies, and I drive with the jacket warm at the neck and the locker key flat against my thigh. Maple Street slides by in small yards and low porches, salt powder on the curb, a dog that lifts its head then settles. By the time I park on Main, the diner windows glow the way a stove glows when the flame is low and steady. Heat meets me at the door, coffee, and a trace of butter on a griddle. A bell rings in the kitchen, a voice answers from somewhere behind the pass. The room moves on without looking up. I take the table by the glass, the one with a faint circle where a hot plate left its memory. The waitress sets down water without asking, pours coffee, and tips her chin, the kind of hello that knows a man by the way he sits. Emily comes in with the cold stitched to her hair. Then the door shuts, and the air smooths behind her. She finds me, and for a second I forget what to do with my hands. She is smaller than the call made me think, balanced in the shoulders, a steadiness that did not come easy. A silver bracelet rests on her wrist. The letters are cut deep, my mother's initials, and breath catches where I do not expect it to. She slides into the chair, sets a folder on the table, and says hello. I say hello back. The waitress pours for her leaves 2 creamers and a cup of sugar packets. Steam runs up and then disappears in the room. We do not reach for the folder. We let the quiet carry us a few inches before we step. She asks if I ever tried to find them. The words arrive without weight in the voice, but they put weight on the table. I tell her I stood outside a county office once with a form in my hand, that I read the line about a restraining order that might still be live, that I folded the paper and put it back in my pocket. I tell her I was afraid of being read like a problem. I tell her I let that fear become a habit, and then an excuse. She watches the steam lift off her cup, lets it fade, then looks at me. 19 years is a long time to let a habit speak for you. I nod, and the nod lands where it should. The room runs on around us. A fork taps china. A baby laughs once, surprised by its own sound, then goes quiet against a shoulder. The waitress asks about food. We both shake our heads. Coffee will do. I set the rails down before we move the train. Legal DNA chain of custody identification for both of us, seals that do not come loose. Money matters through counsel, not through a kitchen table. What we call each other will wait for the paper, and even then it will be what is honest in the mouth, not only what is typed in a box. She nods, then says Rick is pressing hard, that his papers read like help, until the signature that after that, they move faster than grief. She says she will not sign while the names do not hold still on the lines. She says she needs an adult who stands and does not rush, who knows a promise is nothing without a date and a stamp. Her phone hums once on the Formica, a soft insect sound under the diner noise. A name floats on the screen, a name we both know. She turns it face down and looks back at the folder. The choice is small, and it is the point. The room does not change, but something in me does. I reach for the folder and wait with my hand over the cardboard until she lets go. The birth certificate sits on top. My name lives in the father field. The box below it waits for ink that never came. There are photographs, a school list with small notes in the margins, a receipt for flowers, the paper thinned by fingers. I square the stack, draw one straight breath, and slide the coffee cup toward the edge to give the papers room. She turns the bracelet with her thumb. The metal catches light and lets it go. She says her mother wore it when money was thin and winter was long, that her grandmother gave it to her the week of the wedding, that the bracelet came back in a box last month, along with a key that no one could name. She says the key lived in a dish with a chip at the rim. I see my own dish by the sink, in my head, white glaze with a nick from a wrench. I tell her about a night behind the shop 8 years back, a belt that cried a quick fix, an invoice left blank. I tell her a man stood in shadow by the dumpster, that I did not step toward him, that I left before his face turned, and the night decided who I was. I tell her I did not know his name then, that I know it now, that fear can turn a man around in his own hallway. She listens with her hands open on the table. She says they moved more than they wanted to, that she learned to take pictures of papers before handing them over, that pages have a way of not returning the way they left. She says her mother liked a corner table at the library and the way the light stayed even there in late afternoon. I slide my card across the table, the one with the lawyer number. I print a time for the call tomorrow. The lab, we will use the block of hours I can leave the shop if HR has the emails she asked for. I write no signing today and put the date under it. Then I push the paper where both of us can see it. If this folder opens for someone else, the page will say what we said. The waitress brings fresh coffee, asks if we are all right, and walks away when we both say we are. We talk about the lab. She has a class in the morning, a shift at the diner after. I have a brake job waiting a tune-up that will not take long if the bolts do not argue. We find a morning that holds the appointment. We plan to meet at the lot and walk in side by side like people who do not mind being seen together. She asks what we do if Rick shows up early with papers and a pen. We both look at the phone face down on the table and then back at each other. We do nothing until counsel reads it. We do not let a counter or a parking lot become an office. We let paper travel on the road it is built for slow, if it has to be slow, so it lands where it belongs. We rest there, and the rest is not heavy. She tells me her mother took pictures of small things when big things were too hard, a cracked cup, a coat on a hook, a pair of boots in the doorway. I tell her my father set his wrenches in order and leaned his ear until the rattle quit. We are not trading for comfort. We are setting a level on wood and watching the bubble find center. The light moves across the window and pulls dusk in behind it. The room shifts to evening pace. I ask if she will bring the birth certificate to the lab. She nods and taps the folder. She says we can talk about names after we have paper. She says she is not trying to be mean. She is trying to be steady. I say steady beats fast and sorry. I say I will sign where the tech points and take my boots off if they ask. I say when this is done, we will go look for the door that takes this key. We stand without hurry. The chairs make the tired sound chairs make after years of service. I leave enough cash to be decent and slide the receipt under the sugar cup. She tucks the folder into her bag, presses the heel of her hand under her eye, then lets it fall. We both turn to the window and see our town easing into its early dark. At the door, she pauses. It is strange, she says, to feel less alone, at a table with a stranger. Strangers are what people are before they decide what else they might be. I say. She nods once, small and clean, then steps into the cold. Her phone hums again in the pocket of her coat. She does not look. I push the door and hold it, not staring, just watching the glass for the small shape of her moving clear. The bell taps the frame and settles. Cold comes in like a thin sheet and lifts the heat off my face. She walks toward her car with her bag tight to her side. The street takes her and gives her back in reflections. I follow a few steps behind and then turn toward my truck. Metal cools in my pocket under my hand, a flat tooth against the seam. For a second, the light from the door slides along her wrist and makes a thin ring. Then the night takes it. Cold stayed with me as I crossed the lot. The door of the diner had taken the light off her wrist and left the street to keep it. In the truck, the key lay flat in my pocket. My hand found it and stayed there long enough for the metal to take my heat. I drove under a sky the color of tin, no radio. The engine, a steady hum, the town letting the night gather at the edges. Morning came like thin paper, coffee black, no sugar boots, laced jacket, zipped. The courthouse stood square against the wind flags, stiff on their poles, the entry glass clouded by breath that was not mine. Inside floor wax and heat, and a metal detector that sighed after each pass. Fluorescent light made the hallway look longer. Doors whispered when they closed. A stamp hit a counter and left a small round decision in its wake. Art McMillan waited by the records window. His suit had the soft edges a good suit gets after years of work. His eyes were the kind that have watched people try their best and their worst in the same hour. We shook hands, and he carried a manila folder like it held something that could be fixed if no one hurried. We sat at a table polished by elbows and patience. He opened the file and slid a form under the light. Temporary restraining order typed at the top. The line where Laura should have signed sat blank. He tapped a small square with a nail that still remembered tools. Holdover had a check where there should have been none. He did not explain. He let his finger rest there, as if weight could lift ink. He turned a page, and the room changed the way a room can when paper asks it to. A police report. Night rain. A door forced. A stranger described in lines that did not fit me. A note said the complaint was withdrawn. Initials lived in the margin, not mine, not hers. Procedure had kept the echo walking after the voice went home. My forearms pressed into the table. My breath took a lower gear and held it. We went about the business of being careful. He mapped the road without making a speech. Legal DNA under chain of custody. A lab that seals and logs and initials every handoff. Identifications, copied names, printed clean dates where they belong. He wrote a letter on a pad that had seen letters before. A civil warning to be sent by mail and by email, a line that said contact should stop and where any future words must land. He asked me to forward what came in and let the paper hold the remembering. At the copier, he fed the birth certificate, and the light crawled under glass. The machine shuddered and canked a corner, snagging in the roller. He lifted the lid, and I eased the sheet free. The edge came out with a soft fray, a white feathering no one would see unless they looked close. I thought about years that had frayed in the same quiet way. He ran the next copy, and it came clean. He clipped them and put one in my hand. The clerk behind the glass asked for ID again. The reader had blinked and refused me the first time. I slid my license under, then my insurance card when she asked. She nodded, and the stamp found the corner it needed. She gave us a time to come back. Her voice had the neutral tone of someone who knows that time moves in the same direction, no matter what we want from it. Art wrote an address on a sheet and said this is where insurance words should live. Email only. No calls that drift. No counters turned into offices. He asked for subject lines that named the matter and attachments that showed each page in a way a judge would not have to squint to read. At his desk, he typed the letter to Rick, with the same pace he had used to walk the hallway. Stop from now on. Contact through counsel. He dated it and slid it into a red folder. For medical records, he took a thin packet from the clerk. He did not say probate, but the packet did. A petition for the court to place Emily where she could carry her mother's last small affairs. When the order came, the hospital would know it could release the note that belonged to this story, not every page, only the one Laura had meant for someone to hear. He underlined a line for his assistant, a habit of men who want their right hand to know the work before they ask for it. I signed where he pointed, and kept my pen on the paper long enough to make the ink honest. He made a call to the lab and spoke a few words that told the person on the other end he was a man who brought clean lines and not trouble. He spelled my name once, spelled Emily, once said seal and chain, and pause waited for the repeat. He wrote the hour on a scrap and tore it clean and put it in my palm. On the courthouse steps, the wind lifted the top edge of my copy and made it shiver. I called. When Emily answered, I could hear shoes on tile and a door that closed softly behind someone. I told her the time for the lab, the address that she should bring the certificate. I said we would walk in and walk out and keep the rest of the day intact. She said she could make it between class and work. Her voice met mine and held even for the length of a breath. Back at the shop, the bay door gave its groan, and then the track eased it home. The calendar stared with block letters that knew what day it was. I set a copy of the certificate under a magnet shaped like a spark plug, a small joke from a parts rep who talked too loud and meant well. From my chair, I could read the line with my name without leaning. I took a heavy marker and wrote a sentence on a fresh card and pinned it above the work orders. Do right then speak. Thick ink on thin board, more weight than it looked. A brake rattle gave up after a quarter turn, and a test loop around the block. Work set my mind down where it could stand. Between jobs, I opened the new email address Art had set for me. I typed a subject line that would make sense in a courtroom. Case Jensen Insurance. I attached a PDF of the letter he had sent. I hit send. The auto-reply came back with a timestamp and a case number, a small light on a long road. The phone buzzed with a number I did not know. I let it slide into voicemail. When it finished, I did not listen. I forwarded the file to Art and dragged the alert into a folder named with the date and nothing else. It felt like tying down a load before a highway run. The strap came across and clicked and stayed. Late afternoon took the street in small bites. I locked the bay and left the office light on a minute longer than I needed to, while the printer fed out clean copies for the folder I would take in the morning. The paper curled at the corner and then settled. Dust turned in the beam like slow snow no one sweeps. Home held the quiet where I had left it. I set the key on the red lid of the toolbox, and the teeth found an old nick and stopped sliding. The radio stayed dark. I poured coffee and waited until the surface lost its steam and kept the kitchen light in a smooth circle. The phone lay face down on the table. Far off, a train held a long note, and then fell away behind the houses. I wrote the lab address on a slip and tucked it behind my shop card in the wallet. I checked the clock and set the alarm anyway. Boots in the mudroom jacket on the chair folder on the counter with the clip squared. I moved a chair an inch and moved it back. The house adjusted to a man making sure. At the sink, I let the water run cold and drank. The window went to a sheet of black and held my shape, faintly a ghost of a man getting ready to stand where he had not stood before. The words on the card at the shop lived behind my eyes whether I wanted them to or not. Do right then speak. They sat in my chest the way a wrench sits in a palm that knows its weight. The furnace clicked on and breathed and then clicked off. I put the key beside the folded copy and the phone and stepped back until all three sat in the same square of light. Metal, paper, glass. A small corner lifted when the blower stopped and settled again. I let the room stay the way it was and did not ask it for more. Then I reached for the switch and let the dark close carefully over what waited for morning. Morning thins over the sink, a pale sheet of light across the counter. The mug holds what warmth is left. The key waits where I set it, metal in a square of brightness. I drink without sugar and let the house stay quiet. Boots in the mudroom folder squared on the table phone face down. The air feels like paper that would tear if I rushed it. The bay door climbs, and the shop takes the cold with a long breath. I wake the computer, and the inbox opens with a subject line that knows how to move a day. Mandatory overtime. I open the file, and the hours sit straight on top of the lab appointment, like a hand laid flat across the road. I write the swap request clean and short. Appointment on file identification required. I will return after. I attach the slip with the lab time that Art tore for me at the courthouse. Send goes out, and the fan in the tower hums with tired certainty. The work orders on the wall read the clock for me. The reply lands fast and hard. Swap denied compliance note attached. I copy HR and write one sentence that stands up on its own legs. I will attend the appointment. I will make up the hours I want the procedure clean. I send it, and the room tilts a little, then settles. The time clock throws a red banner across my name. Pending verification. A small light that tells on a man if he blinks. I breathe once, and then again, then open a new mail to Melissa in compliance. I forward the denial attach the lab slip state the conflict line I was asked to state. Names and dates only, no adjectives. Her answer changes the air. Discipline suspended pending review all communication in writing from this point. Submit the slip to file so the ledger learns the truth before rumor does. She notes a social tie between the scheduler and a party known to me, requests a separate note with that fact only. She tags the absence excused pending. I reply yes, and close the drawer on the shop keys. I lock the bay, test the back door, and drive. The sky keeps its chalk color, and the town looks paused. The lab lot has straight white lines that still look new. Emily waits near the entrance with her hands inside her sleeves. Her breath makes a small cloud, and the wind takes it apart. We say good morning the way people say it when they have 2 jobs to do and time for one. Her phone hums a single note in her pocket. She looks down, turns the screen face to her palm, then drops it back into the coat. We can forward it after I say. She nods and lets the air settle. Inside smells like sanitizer and stale coffee. A clock makes a small sound with each second steady and modest. Dr. Priya Shah comes through the door with a clipboard and a voice that sets the pace without raising it. She asks for our cards, and we hand them over. Plastic clicks, a clean line crawls across the scanner. Her pen finds boxes and fills them with marks that do not wobble. She turns the stamp once in her fingers, sets it, and the seal blooms on paper like a held breath. Our names live under it in fresh ink. Custody log initials double at each handoff, envelopes, sealed labels pressed flat with the heel of her hand. She slides the forms to us and waits for our eyes before she waits for our signatures. Truth likes routine, she says, and the small smile that follows looks like trust in checklists more than trust in people. The tech in the small room is all precision and plain words. Cotton swabs no food or drink for a short window before no mint, no gum. Emily sits still and lets her shoulders settle. I keep my hands on my knees and count my breaths to 3, then 4, then back to 1. Swabs into envelopes, envelopes into a bag into a box, with a number that matches the log. Seals pressed lines initialed, where the ink leaves just enough pressure to show care. 72 hours, Dr. Shah says, and if the sample needs a retake, we will call not a problem, just procedure. Feelings can wait in the lobby, I say, and she lets the small smile stay a moment longer before it goes. Her pen finds the last blank, and the clip closes with a click that sounds like a latch on a good door. We step outside, and the wind lifts the disinfectant smell off our clothes. The light looks cleaner than it did an hour ago. I unlock the truck, and the heater begins its slow work. Emily keeps one hand on the folder as if paper is warmer when it rests against skin. At the first red light, her phone wakes itself. A name that keeps trying the lock. She forwards it to Art without opening types for council review, then lets the light die. I send the chain from my phone at the next stop with a subject line that would make sense to a judge. Case Jensen Insurance incoming contact. The auto reply lands by the time the light shifts. The day feels a little more steady, with a number and a time stamp pinned to it. She asks if I can take the long way home, the one with more porches and fewer lanes. I turn right, and the truck knows the route from habit. She has a shift in 2 hours. She says she will be fine. She says the lady at the end booth likes extra lemon with her tea and always counts out tips with coins. Her mouth lifts and then settles again. Not a grin, only a small change in weather. At her door she pauses and looks at the camera under the eave. Her hand goes to the folder and stays there. Call if he waits in the street, I say. She nods once. Thank you for standing where this is heavy, she says, steady and plain. Then the door closes and the seam feels true. The shop takes me the way a place takes a person who has given it his shoulders for years. I sit at the desk and write to Melissa. Appointment completed, documents attached, absence logged as excused, pending verification. I attach the lab confirmation and the calendar square I scanned. Her reply comes back tight and clear. Acknowledged review, ongoing email only. I pull a pickup onto the lift and listen for the complaint it has been making all week. A brake line shows a wet thread. I turn the fitting a quarter wipe, it clean press the pedal, feel the give become a hold. Work puts the pulse where it belongs. I run a rag along the fender, and the paint gives the light back the way honest work gives a man back to himself. Evening lays a hand on the windows. I bring the door down and let it carry the day to the floor. No radio, no ball game. I clean the counter and square the folder. Calm does not come from promises at midnight. It comes from numbers, seals, signatures, and the small work of putting things where they go. Home is the sound of heat shrinking in the lines and wood easing back into place. I open the toolbox and pull the top tray all the way out. The space beneath has not seen light in years. I wipe a path through the dust and make a clean room with a rag that comes away dark. The key goes there, teeth toward the back metal against metal, and stops moving as if it remembers its slot. Somewhere a phone breathes a single note and then goes still. The house settles into its small sounds. I stand in the doorway and listen to metal soften after a climb. The dark gathers patient and even, ready. Saturday lays a thin frost on the driveway. The truck glass holds my breath until the heater finds its voice. The key sits in my palm with the small teeth pressing a memory into skin. I let the engine settle, then ease into a street that keeps its quiet the way a hand keeps a secret. The storage place waits behind a chain fence that hums when the gate rolls. Rows of doors face each other like neighbors that nod and do not speak. The hallway lights buzz once, then steady. Rubber dust cardboard, a faint cold that has not learned anyone's name. Emily stands by the office window with her coat pulled close. We say good morning and let it be enough. We walk the line of numbers together. The right unit stands with a lock that has not been turned in years. The key catches, then gives a grind that travels into my wrist. The door rises and cold air drops like a stored breath. A square room, a towel over a crate, a smell that belongs to paper and not to people. We crouch and lift the towel. Dust hangs and then falls. The crate slides forward with a low creak. Inside, letters bound by a rubber band that has gone brittle, an ultrasound curled at the edges, a plastic case with 2 mini cassettes. On one sleeve in a hand, I knew when life was simpler, the words, "If he comes back, tell him I forgive him." We sit on the crate because the concrete holds the chill. I take from the glove box a small deck that has lived there longer than sense, and a pair of old earbuds. I blow dust from the jack, spin the wheel once, feed the tape, hand Emily one bud, keep the other. We breathe to the same count, then press play. A soft hiss finds our ears, then Laura comes nearer than memory ever let her. She says a date and a time, as if to anchor herself. I see a kitchen table, a pen set down to the right, the kind of pen you buy on purpose. Her voice carries weighed sentences. She names debts, speaks the number like it might shrink if it hears itself. She says a knock came in, rain, the light stayed off the chain, stayed set. She says a man stood where the streetlight throws a shadow and did not move. Fear, she says, without saying the word, hardened and made a fence where a door should have been. We do not stop the tape. We let each thought step and leave room for the next. She says she would find me when Emily turned 18, when paper might listen and threats would sound thin. Her breath catches on the edge of a word, and the hair along my arms lifts. Emily watches the far wall jaw set, hands open on her knees, eyes dry, because sometimes dry holds more. The tape stutters, the capstan nips a corner, the wheel chews a breath. I lift a finger, tilt the cassette a shade, the take-up catches. Her voice returns a little thinner, as if distance took a bite and gave it back. We do not speak. We ride the small failing and the small recovery as if both belong. The first side clicks to its end. The hallway timer ticks once, somewhere above us. We sit still until the silence is silence again. I press eject and turn the second case in my hand. The handwriting leans a little right, the ink dark, as if the pen did not want to stop. On the label, the same 14 words set like a beam across a room. If he comes back, tell him I forgive him. The second tape rolls, and the hiss is softer. Laura sounds tired and clear. She names small things when large things weigh too much: a chipped cup in the sink, a coat on a hook sun that stayed longer than it had to. She says she wrote my name on an envelope and did not mail it, that motion is not the same as moving on. Then she says the line on the label, and this time it lands as if a shelf had waited for it. Not warm, not cold, something that holds. We let the deck run out of sound. I open the crate again and find a bank slip folded tight. Deposit to a hospital account donor, HC. The numbers do not shout. They tell what they tell. Cold air from a winter afternoon steps back into my chest. An ATM that ate bills and offered a quiet screen me looking both ways on an empty street, feeding a plain envelope, leaving a porch that was mine, like I did not live there. Emily stands and takes 2 steps inside the small room and back. Her hand finds the door track, grease black under her fingers. I need a minute, she says, not asking permission. I look at the floor and count to 5. She rolls the bracelet once with her thumb and lets it settle. We do the work right. She lifts her phone and photographs each item where it lies before it moves. She numbers the sleeves and reads the tags under her breath. 1, 2, 3, so the line holds straight. I hold the seal strips and set them down without wrinkles. Letters slide into clear sleeves in order. The ultrasound goes into a hard case because time has already pulled on it enough. The tapes return to their plastic bed, and then into a bag with a seal that will show if any hand tries to open what it should not. We note each number on a pad that will ride with the bag until a different light. She looks up and asks if there is one letter I want to keep. Her voice is rough from not letting itself break. I choose a page that says more with its pauses than its ink. I fold it twice, place it in the pocket of my work shirt, a bolt set aside where my hand will find it when it is time to tighten. We carry the crate out and lock the unit. The hallway tube flickers once when the motion sensor forgets us, then remembers and steadies again. Outside, the air tastes cleaner. Emily leans on the fender and looks through the windshield at the deck on the seat, then at me. We should take it all to Art today, she says. Yes, I say, when he opens, and we both feel something in the shoulders let go the distance of half an inch. We stop for coffee at a place that asks for no names. She drops a lemon slice into her cup and watches it sink without complaint. We say nothing about the tapes. We speak about traffic and a dog in a sweater and how winter makes people walk faster for reasons no one can explain. The world does what it does while a life changes and does not ask for permission. Art meets us at a clear table. His scanner hums like a small motor that has found a clean belt. He does not touch a thing until we set it down and say what it is. He numbers, he logs, he photographs the seal before he breaks it, then seals it again, and initials the new line. He picks up the bank slip and raises his head a fraction, not more. He files it without question. He copies the ultrasound through a sleeve so the heat will not curl it further. He sets the tapes aside for transfer with a witness. The room smells like paper and faint citrus. My palm leaves a dry print on a manila corner, and I lift my hand and fold it in the other. We sign where the ink waits for us, and he names where each piece will live, and who has the right to see it. We leave with receipt numbers and a time, and the door closes behind us with a sound that belongs to buildings where rules work. The sky has gone to nickel. Emily asks me to drive the long way. I do. She thanks me for being in the picture without taking it over. I say I will text when the lab calls. She says she will be ready, and her hand taps the bracelet once, like a small oath. After dinner, I go back to the shop, a quiet different from home. I set the deck on the desk and feed the second tape. I leave the overhead off. The lamp throws a circle, and dust turns in it at a pace that is almost still. I press play and let the low sound arrive, and then the voice. I sit with my hands open on my knees and listen for the breath before the sentence, and the breath after the way a person keeps time when a song matters more than how it ends. The tape runs to its click. I do not rush it back. I rest my fingertips on the warm shell plastic holding the ghost of the motor. Somewhere a motion sensor in a hallway forgets us, and then remembers the light clicks off, then on, and the room returns to its circle of lamp and plastic, warm to the touch. I let my hand fall, and the quiet keep what it has. The phone buzzes before the shop light warms. Lab first minor contamination 48 hours. I read it twice, and feel my shoulders try to hurry. Then I set them down where they belong. Doing it right beats doing it fast, and arguing forever. I forward the note to Art and to Emily, add the windows. I can leave the shop, then turn the screen face down, and let the socket oil my palms back to work. The bay door moans itself open. The morning air stands still, a rotor sets true under my hands. Melissa writes with 2 words. I trust acknowledged, received. I send her the lab email and the appointment block so the ledger learns the truth before rumor does. The day holds steady for a while, the kind of steady that means the next bend is coming whether you want it or not. Another buzz a subject line that tries on a suit. Management agreement from Rick, a file name that poses as official. I do not open the attachment. For counsel only, I type and send the chain to Art. His reply lands with a PDF. The warning letter dated the docket line already printed in the footer. He attaches the earlier notice and a still frame from the doorbell cam we have not taken yet. A blank placeholder waiting for a picture with time in the corner. Any more contact meets a petition he writes without writing the words. Then he files it under one case line and lets it sit where a clerk can find it without asking. Work carries me to dusk. Emily texts that she is home. The next alert belongs to the camera on her porch. Another follows, short and bare. I call. Her voice holds like a rope that has known weight. He came to the door, she says he fed something through the slot. I tell her I am 10 minutes away, and the road agrees. Her porch light throws a thin cone that does not reach the curb. The air has that cold that makes wood speak. Emily opens the door and steps back, so the hall camera sees both of us. The envelope lies flat on the mat, a page beneath it, folded twice. We do not touch them. We watch the clip together on the small screen, blue light on our hands, faces steady, because steady is what works. On the screen, he checks the street with his chin, tries the handle once, not hard, and lets it go. He holds a cash envelope, and a page feeds the page first through the brass. The corner of a bill catches on the lip, then slips. He turns his head as if a footstep will declare itself. Then he leaves with the posture of a man who believes in his own cleverness. The time and date glow in the corner without blinking. The porch light gives him shape, and then gives the shape to the card. We send the file to Art, straight from the app, original quality, no compression. He asks for the backup through the archived path, and Emily finds it faster than I would have. The progress bar moves, stops, moves again, lands. His next email drops with the new warning letter attached, the docket number in the footer, the hearing time waiting in the margin if the court needs to see us sit on a bench. Well done. He writes 2 words that put a hand between us and the cold. I bag the envelope with a seal strip while Emily writes the time on a note and sticks it on the outside so the paper will not take our ink. We stand on the porch and let the air settle. Let the law stand between you and trouble, I say, and I mean it like a fence you can lean on. She nods once, then watches the ring light blink and sleep a small eye that knows its work. In the kitchen, we send the still frame to the chain, the time stamped clear in the corner. I tell her I will drive past twice tonight, once now, and once late, slow enough to read the street without making it a show. She says she will keep the porch camera on the highest sensitivity and leave the hallway light on low. We do not add anything extra. She locks the door. I touch the rail at the steps, the grain rough under my palm. The night keeps the town. I eat standing at the counter at home and leave the plate for morning. Before bed, I open the lab email once more, put the retest in the calendar, draw a box that looks like a fence around the hour. I sleep with the kind of sleep that comes when you have done what you can do, and the next part is not yours yet. The lab lot looks the same the next morning. Lines clean, light, early wind, not much. Dr. Shah comes through the door with the clipboard that has learned her hand. She holds the envelopes to the light, reads each seal number out loud, waits for our eyes, then sets them down and lays 2 sets of initials, one slow, one steady. Every handoff earns 2 signatures and a breath. She writes the time on the custody log and lets us read it before we add our names to the space that invites them. The small room is bright and anonymous. The tech speaks plain. Cotton swabs, no gum, no mint, no water for the short window before. The swabs find their envelopes. The envelopes find the bag finds a box with a number that lives in the log. Dr. Shah names the number, and the box then seals the seam and presses it flat with the heel of her hand. 72 hours, she says, and if the sample needs a retake, we will call not a problem, just procedure. I nod to the rhythm of her pen. Emily keeps one hand on the copy of the log like a person holds a map. We step out into clean light. In the truck, she reads the copy again page, lifting at the corner under the heater. It feels less like waiting and more like moving, she says. I know that feeling. We shake hands without a speech. She goes to her shift. I go to the shop. Between cars, I check the inbox. Art has filed the petition with the clip and the prior letter attached. He writes that the clerk gave him a time if it becomes necessary, and that often a warning backed by numbers and pictures teaches a lesson without a hallway. He reminds me to keep it all in writing and to sleep if sleep will come. I send 2 words and a period. Thank you. Then I take a bolt that has asked for patience and give it patience until it turns. Late afternoon lays a gray hand on Main Street. I bring the bay door down and watch it take the day with it. In the office, the lamp warms the desk. I send Melissa 1 chain with the lab confirmation and the custody log. Her reply lands with a timestamp and 2 words that do the work: acknowledged, ongoing. No calls. Email only. The ledger will have what it needs if anyone asks. I clean the counter and stack what belongs together. The copy of the log sits fanned under the lamp edges, catching a thin band of light. Outside, a car idles once at the corner, then slips away. The furnace breath drops to a thread and stops. I let the room keep its breath and I let it keep the rest. The phone buzzed, while the lamp still drew a thin band of light across the custody log. I turned the screen, and the lab number sat there, like a weight that knew its place. I answered, and the voice moved straight to the point, 99.99. She asked me to confirm my name and my date. I did. And she thanked me with the calm of someone who hands over news they understand, but will never carry. The call ended. I set the phone face down and watched the light on the paper hold steady, as if the room needed a second to believe the math. I drove to the grocery lot on Maple and rolled under a pole lamp that made a clean circle. The wheel felt old and right under my hands. I laughed once, short and clean, the way a wrench slips and does not hit bone. After that, the tears came on their own. Not loud, not long, only a heavy machine settling onto the right jack stand. I wiped my face with the back of my wrist, and it tasted like winter. I sent Emily 1 line, and then let the phone rest. Some news should cross a door and not a screen. She came to the shop an hour later with her coat unzipped and a leather glove in one hand. She set the glove on the bench and stood there to see if the ground would stay still. She looked at me, and a small word did the work of a long road. "Hi, Dad." No clutching. No staging. We let our hands be the ceremony, mine flat on the bench, hers beside it, 2 palms that understood weight. That afternoon, we rolled a '72 Chevy onto the lift. The paint kept the kind of shine that hands can make. The belt had frayed and showed its threads like a scar a man will let a friend see. We popped the hood, and the smell of old oil rose and stayed. She held the light, I loosened, the adjuster, walked the new belt over the pulleys. The last fastener hesitated a beat. Emily changed her grip. I dropped the beam lower, the socket bit, and a dry click told us the metal had made up its mind. She set the tension and checked the deflection with a thumb and a breath. When it hummed instead of sang, we wiped the pan clean and listened to the idle settle. I told her that rust is not evil. It only learns wrong when no one touches it. It needs patience more than polish. She smiled the way weather changes and said she thought so too. The toolbox drawer slid shut with a sound that draws a straight line where one had wavered. An email from Melissa reached me before closing. Time read 4:12 in the afternoon, and the subject line read record correction. The attachment showed a revised ledger, a thin line through discipline, a note that overtime had been misclassified back pay due. I wrote 2 words and a period thank you and sent them. Then I opened a new message to Art and asked that anything owed to me for that weekend be sent straight to the bursar on Emily's account tuition and fees only receipt back to file. He answered 1 word, done, and forwarded a confirmation from the college with a number on the corner that read 1327. Numbers that sit still are the kind that work. Evening came easy for once. We left the bay door up a little longer and let Main Street slide past the opening. Salt hissed under tires, and the town carried 2 names it had not known last week. Emily leaned on the fender and told me a small thing about Laura, how she tied a piece of blue ribbon to the grocery cart so it would not go missing, how the knot wore thin by spring, and she retied it without a speech. I could see the ribbon, a flat, bright blue that belongs to a sky no one can buy. Sunday found us on a screen. We kept it simple and kept it the same. 10 minutes for Laura, 20 for hands, and work, 10 for the week ahead. She held up a bent clip on her bike, and I showed her where to set the pliers so the metal would remember straight. I turned the camera and let her see how to test belt tension with 2 fingers and a breath. We named a time to call Art on Monday and a short list for Melissa. Then we let the call stop itself, while it was still good. When the shop was quiet again, I wrote on a small card and taped it beside the maintenance calendar where a person looks without meaning to. I smoothed the edge with my thumb until the tape lay flat. In the morning, my hand would reach for the keys, and my eyes would catch the line without needing to say it out loud. Sometimes that is enough. Sometimes that is how you start. Monday moved along a straighter rail. Melissa confirmed that the back pay would post and that the record would show the correction. Her message sounded like a hinge, one thing off and another on, and it clicked the way good hardware clicks. Art sent a second confirmation from the bursar funds applied to tuition and fees only a balance for books available through the college and not through anyone who shakes a hand on a porch. He added a line that the hearing time still sat in the margin of the case if it ever needed to be read out loud by a clerk. Work filled the day with problems that understood tools. A Suburban that had learned to hesitate woke under a new coil. A Civic with a rattle that sounded like a jar of bolts went quiet when a heat shield finally took the fastener it wanted. Emily stopped by after class with a thermos and stood under the lift while a slow drip found the pan we had placed to meet it. She picked up the glove she had left on the bench, turned it once, set it down where it had been. I asked for a 3/8 ratchet, and she found it without looking hard. We did not talk about what to call each other. We did not need to. She took a picture of the Chevy with the hood open and the belt seated, then pocketed the phone and helped me lower the car. The chain spoke in short runs, and the posts took the load the way they always had. That night we kept the ritual. She answered over the sound of dishes set gently in a rack. She told me a memory of Laura that I could fold and keep the way her mother tapped the wheel twice when a light turned green, a small promise of safe passage. I showed her how to check oil without making a mess, and how to feel the difference between a clean thread and a cross thread, with the pads of her fingers more than her eyes. We wrote 2 small goals and stopped while the moment was still true. I walked the bays before I left. The calendar by the door held the week in block letters that did not wobble. The card I had taped sat square and quiet. I opened the top drawer of the toolbox and saw the key where it lived now, not where it had hidden, and that simple difference made sense in a way I did not need to explain. I closed the drawer and felt the steel meet home with a soft sound. The phone lay face down and stayed that way. The town kept the kind of quiet that knows where the noise is kept for when it is needed. Somewhere a train took a long breath and gave it back in pieces. I checked the deadbolt and turned off the lamp. The bay held the last inch of light like a thin line a carpenter trusts when he sets his saw. The glove still sat on the bench. The leather kept the shape of the hand that used it. Near the door, the motion sensor blinked one soft green and went still. The chain gave one dry step back into itself. I stood there for a breath, then let the dark have the rest. The dark held the room the way a palm holds a worn coin. Outside the siding, the insects kept a thin, even song. I stood long enough for the chill to pass through the shirt, and then I walked to the truck. The town stayed quiet. I drove with the window cracked and let the cool roll across my knuckles until the light along Main began to thin. Morning came in soft over the grain elevator. Coffee black, the steam lifted and vanished as if it had somewhere simple to be. The shop smelled of rubber and steel that had learned to rest. I wiped the bench once, checked the hook where the keys lived, then headed for the courthouse, while streetlights winked out one at a time like small jobs finished right. Art waited by the clerk window with a folder tucked close. Emily stood beside him with her feet set and her jaw steady. We spoke in low voices, not out of fear, out of respect for rooms that hold other people's days. Our line was called, and the judge read what needed reading. Simple probate approved. The clerk stamped the order and issued letters of authority naming Emily personal representative. The stamp made a soft, round sound that felt like the end of a sentence we had all been careful with. We signed where names belong. The paper took ink and kept it. The hallway opened wide enough to walk without touching shoulders. We crossed to the hospital where the sign for medical records points you to a desk that faces a glass door. The clerk checked the letters against the order the way a good mechanic checks a part number against a box. She noted Emily's name and mine on a short log, then set a sealed envelope on the table and turned it so the flap faced us. Art watched the chain and signed the line that waits for a witness. Emily held the envelope a second, as if letting it warm to her hands, then broke the seal and slid out a single page. Tell him I forgive him. 5 words on white paper in the hand we both knew. No decoration, no hurry. A line set right where the squeak used to be. She ran her thumb along the edge and passed the sheet to me. I read it once and folded it clean, not to hide it, to let it live in the shape it had asked for. Back at Art's office, the safe sat where it always sits, quiet and sure. He lined the forms like parts on a bench, crossed out what no longer spoke for us, and filed the rest under one case line. We updated beneficiaries so names would land where they should, and stay there when tired eyes came looking. He drafted a contingency letter to hold in his file a small map for a morning that might not offer a guide. I wrote 2 lines in my own hand that anything due me would reach Emily's schooling first, and that the rest would serve plain needs rather than noise. He slid the letter into a red folder and wrote the date on the tab. He noted the warning stood no new contact on file, and let that line sit like a bolt tightened to spec. Later we walked the path of brick at the college office, past a board that carries more hope than news. A counselor handed Emily a short list of independent advisors and explained what it means to keep money clean. She chose a woman with a small room near the library, a desk neat, a plant watered that morning. They spoke about tuition and fees that would move on schedule, and land with a receipt, no porch needed. I sat 3 chairs back and watched the way the pen sat in each hand. When they shook hands, the room felt an inch larger. By dusk, we drove to the hill where Laura rests. The mower had left its lines tight to the stones. The light turned amber along the edges of the names. Wind moved across the grass in a way that asks nothing and gives what it can. Emily stood with her hands in her coat and looked beyond the trees. I set the bracelet marked G and M at the base of her marker and said 2 sentences, an apology that came late, a promise measured. The rest I would do by daily discipline. We did not fill the space with talk. The breeze turned once and let us be. When we came home, the house held evening the way a good room does without effort. I poured 2 black coffees and set them by the phone. The screen lifted and found us both. Emily said this week we do an oil change and the words, "I am sorry," on time. I said we add the work of keeping promises through small, repeating steps. We split the call into the same squares that have started to fit. 10 minutes for her mother, facts, and moments folded without tearing. 20 for skills, the feel of a clean thread under the pads of 2 fingers, the sound a filter makes when the seal sits. 10 for planning the email to Art, the note to Melissa, the bills that move on a schedule instead of a mood. We stopped while the moment was still good and let the screen go to a soft dark. The days that followed had the weight of work, but not the drag of dread. We met Art to finish what belongs to paper. He filed the letters and closed each piece on the bench in a way that will make sense to a clerk in a winter afternoon. Emily took a call from the bursar. The woman confirmed receipt. The memo read, "Emily Cooper tuition, and fees only a code," sat clear in the corner. No envelope crossed a sill. No handshake asked to be a receipt. Sunday arrived with light the color of soft blue. The street outside kept its quiet like a church before the first engine in the lot. I brewed 2 mugs and set them side by the phone, and waited for the ring that has begun to sound like a room I know. We kept to the small plan. We checked a filter wrench against a filter and talked about torque that lives in the wrist and not in the jaw. We practiced an apology for a small lateness, simple, timely finished. We wrote down a time for next week and a part number for the filter her car prefers. We ended before the good turned thin. In the afternoon, I took the long road past Marion Cemetery and down by the river. Geese stood in cold water that did not argue. A father and a boy kicked a ball near a table and laughed in short bursts that sounded like a motor finding idle and keeping it. The town felt like itself, and a little more. I stopped at the light on Main and watched dust lift in sunlight and fall again the way it always has, the way it will, when I am not here to see it. That evening, I wrote 2 words on the calendar under the week ahead. Show up. I taped the corner so the page would not curl when the heat came on. The phone lit once with a meeting notice. Art and Melissa copied the next steps, small and named. I wiped the counter and set the pen back in its place. The siding outside kept the insects steady. Inside the shop, the air held the last of the warmth, and then let it go. I looked at my hands under the lamp. The locker key hung beside the Chevy keys on the hook that once held an old tape measure. Some things only need the right name to take their place. You do not shove them in. You let them fit where they were meant. I stood until the thought finished forming, and then I did not need to stand there anymore. I killed the lights in order front to back, the room dimming in even steps. The safe sat quiet. The bench held still. The keys settled without touching. I locked the door and listened to the insects keep their thin, even song. Redemption does not erase 19 years. It teaches the road for the next 19. The night leaned in. The street kept its slow breath. In my pocket, the phone stirred with the small sound of a Sunday call, and I lifted it into the quiet room that now knows my name.